Today we're going to be talking about what do you do when you have a person speaking, such as a pastor or a worship leader, and you are asked to play something underneath them. The basic principle I want you to remember is less is more. This is not the time to try out your fancy new accompaniment patterns. This is not the time to try out all your runs and fill-ins in the right hand. This is the time to play as little as possible, because your goal is to support what the speaker is saying, not to detract from it. And as pianists, our instrument is naturally percussive. And so we can naturally draw attention to ourselves if we're not careful. So we want to be sure to not play much at all so that we can draw attention to what the speaker is saying and not draw attention to ourselves. So how do we do this? One thing that's very effective is to use pads. So my keyboard does not have a lot of different pads, but it does have a few. So I usually like using a simple little soft pad. And it's basically a nice little sound. You can hear kind of a little hum in the background. I have some noise suppression on my microphone, so you might not be able to hear all of it, but you can hear a little bit of it, that there's this little hum or this pad sound in the background. And I like using pads because it dampens the attack of the key, is what we call it in piano terms. When you depress a key, it's the attack, and this is the release. So the pads dampen the attack of the key. And on my piano, and on yours probably as well, you can adjust the balance. So I can adjust the balance between the keyboard sound and the pad sound. So if I adjust it all this way, I'm getting mostly keyboard sound and very little pad. If I adjust it this way, I'm getting mostly pad sound and very little keyboard sound. So when I'm playing and when I'm speaking over what I'm playing or when someone else is, I like to adjust this to make sure that it's not distracting and make sure that it's supportive. As far as what you're going to be playing, keep it simple, very simple. There is absolutely nothing wrong with just holding a C chord for 2 measures. And then maybe holding an F chord. I'm using the G in the top kind of as a color tone. Let me change my camera view so you can see it here. Okay, so I'm basically playing an F chord, but I'm keeping that G in the top, just kind of to add some color. So it's a good idea to use a consistent chord progression throughout. So in this case, I'm using the chord progression from Majesty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And a speaker could easily talk over the top of this. So I'm just adding a little bit of interest here and there. But it's not busy and it's not distracting. You can also experiment with some of the improvisatory things that we talked about. You can experiment with, just make sure it doesn't get too busy. Like that might even be too much, depending on what the speaker is saying and how rapidly they're talking. But notice I'm playing very little. You could also experiment with the color chords that we talked about. This is actually a great place to use color chords, especially the 2 and even the 6. So if we held something like this in the right hand, so I'm just changing the left hand and just replaying this G in the right hand. Something like this is more than sufficient to play underneath a speaker. So the main principle to remember is less is more. Your playing should not be distracting. It should draw attention to the person speaking and ultimately to the Lord and not to you. So a great activity is to play and then speak yourself over the top of what you're playing. And if you can speak over the top of what you're playing, then you know that what you're playing is probably just about right. So have fun practicing playing behind a speaker.